Okay, good morning. My name is Greg Werner. I'm a strength and conditioning coach at James Madison University, and this is our panel discussion dealing with a lot of topics. It was listed in as Olympic sports, but it can go outside of that. Put together a great panel. Got Donnie Mabe from the University of Texas, Michelle Martin Dietz from the University of Alabama, Dave Richardson from Ohio State, Callie Williams from the University of South Alabama, Mike Bastier from the University of Illinois, and Dave Bass from Wake Forest, and Mark Seaver from Wake Forest. Okay. Appreciate you guys doing this, and thank you to the CSCCA for allowing us to get together and to have this discussion. I think it's important that we have discussions, and in that thread, this is a discussion. This is not anything we've rehearsed, and they know what I'm going to ask them, and it's a discussion. So if you guys have any questions, jump up, raise your hand, yell them out. I'm just going to moderate it, and they're going to answer, and we're going to have some dialogue here on some topics that are hopefully important to you. One thing I've asked these guys to do is that some of the first questions I might field are questions that may be more important to younger strength coaches, younger coaches coming up in the profession, to help them to gain some knowledge. But, if anything you guys have that you have questions about, that maybe you just want to ask this population and you want me to be the one to broadcast it, bring it up during this period, okay? One thing I'm concerned about, and is that sometimes it's happened recently, we're starting to lose our title as coaches. This is a coaching association. This is the Collegiate Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association. You guys have all taken a certification, gone through a process to become certified as a strength and conditioning coach. And I see these titles changing, seems like on a monthly basis. That guy was a strength coach last month, and now he's a sports performance, guru, director, whatever. And that's okay as long as we still keep the understanding of what we are and what we started with and how we've developed as a profession, and we are coaches. When we start losing that perspective on being a coach and don't want to be called a coach, we want to be called a technician or a specialist or, this or that or the other thing, I think that takes away from what we've built right here in this great association. And it's a coaches association. So I wanted to start off with just reading, and you guys probably know all this, but the etymology behind the word coach and where coaching came from as far as having the title of a coach. The English term coach is derived from a medium of transport that traces its origins to the Hungarian word kocis, meaning carriage, that was named after the village where it was first made. The first use of the term coaching to mean an instructor or trainer arose around 1830 in Oxford University slang for a tutor who carries a student through an exam. Coaching thus has been used in language to describe the process used to transport people from where they are to where they want to be. The first use of the term in relation to sports came in 1861. So the big part of that I see is carrying people from where they are to where they want to be. And that's what we do. We help athletes come in at point A and get to hopefully point Z, to develop their potential, to carry them, to help them, to guide them, okay? And one thing I want to challenge you guys is to always develop the mindset that you are important to each student-athlete's journey to success, that you're an integral part to the process of their development, and take pride in that. Take pride in being a coach, and daily work hard to sharpen your presentation, not just to the big money people, to the athlete. Every day, sharpen your presentation to the athlete. Make the athlete be your central focus. Because at the end of the day, that's why we have a job. We don't have a job to bamboozle the donor, to bamboozle the person that's going to donate money or all those things. And that's great if we can do that. But our bottom line job is to help student athletes develop student athletes, to be that coach, okay, to stay sharp. I want to tell you a story about staying sharp, okay? A young man approached, and this is dealing with a logger. A young man approached the foreman of a logging crew and asked for a job. "That depends," replied the foreman. "Let's see you fell a tree, chop a tree down." The young man stepped forward and skillfully felled a tree. Impressed, the foreman exclaimed, "You can start on Monday. You got the job." Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday rolled by. And Thursday afternoon, the foreman approached the young man and said, "You can pick your check up on the way out today." Startled, the young man replied, "I thought we got paid on Friday." "Normally we do," said the foreman, "but we're letting you go today because you've fallen behind. Our daily felling charts show that you've dropped from first place on Monday to last place today." "But I'm a hard worker," the young man said. "I arrive first, I leave last, and even have worked through my coffee breaks." Does that sound familiar to anybody? The foreman, sensing the young man's intensity or integrity, thought for a minute and then asked, "Have you been sharpening your axe?" The young man replied, "No, sir. I've been working too hard to take time for that." Our lives are like that, as strength and conditioning coaches. We get so busy, we work so hard, we're the first ones there, we're the last ones to leave, and sometimes we don't take time to sharpen that axe. And that's why we see a lot of movement in the profession, because we don't take time to sharpen our axes, we don't take time to step back for that student athlete and do what we need to sharpen our presentation to them, and we lose sight of them sometimes, and we look at the money picture, the money. Let's talk to this person, let's work with that person so that we can get bigger, better, gear, items, things, doodads, and it all comes back to, what are you doing for the student athlete? It doesn't take a lot of that. It takes a lot of time, and it takes keeping that sharp axe so that you can keep chopping at that high rate. So I want to challenge you guys. From my end, that's my part of this, is to challenge you, and especially, all of you, young and old. I've been doing this a while, and I learned that process a long time ago that, a great mentor of mine told me that if you get up every day and spend 30 minutes reading something professionally, something to make you sharper as a professional, and then another 30 minutes on something inspirational, something that inspires you, and then find time to read something motivational, that's going to make you a better coach. That's going to sharpen your axe. Okay? So I challenge you guys to do that. With that, I'm going to open it up to the panel here. Give us some examples of what you guys do to keep your axe sharp, things that you do to stay sharp as a professional, as a coach. Okay? Anybody can take it. Grab the mic and go. You're on.
I think the thing that keeps me sharp is probably all the people that are in this room. One of the great things about this conference, I know I leave every year and I feel sharp when I get back to campus, and that's just the dialogue, and it's not the X's and O's dialogue all the time. In fact, most of the time it's not. But interacting with the people here and just being able to discuss things with you guys keeps me sharp. Now, that's once a year. So what am I doing the rest of the year? I'm in a situation where I'm in a 1,800 square foot weight room by myself, working with a basketball team. And, if you're in a weight room with a staff, just take time, pause, and know that you're blessed to be around other strength coaches and not sort of in a silo. So to keep fresh, keep my axe sharp, I make it a point to get on the phone with my good buddy Jim Zielinski, the Olympic director at Illinois. I talk to him once a week. I go over to his weight room once a week. I'll go over to the football weight room and talk to Coach Hillman, talk to Coach Edson, and just talk shop. So I worked for Coach Werner a couple years ago, many years ago, and he instilled the 30 minutes of reading every day, and that's certainly something I've done for the past 16, 17 years, and that's been a huge part of me keeping my axe sharp. But in addition to that, there is no price tag that we can put on simply talking to each other. And if you're on a campus with 4, 5, 6 weight rooms, get out of your weight room and go talk to some of the other people, because they will sharpen your axe, and vice versa.
Good. Anybody else?
I'd like to agree with Mike on collaboration with other strength coaches is a great thing. But one of the things that I've found over the years is vacation. You guys don't take vacations. I didn't used to take vacations because it just seems wrong. And I've learned over the years that when you can take a week and unplug, it regenerates you at so much of a higher level, because you get to reflect. A lot of times when we work so hard and long day to day, you don't have time to reflect on, on what you're doing and looking at kind of the big picture. I have found that actually taking a vacation and getting away and unplugging has been an unbelievable experience as far as regenerating me. There was a commercial on TV the other day. My wife and I were laughing at this little girl says they're paid vacation days. Like you have to take them, and I think it's would be very good for you. It'd be hard to do for a lot of us, but to unplug for just a small amount of time helps.
Good. Anybody else? Donnie?
I got a thought for staying sharp. There's a quote I heard recently. I think I've had this philosophy for years, but work harder on yourself than you do your job. If you work harder at your job than you do on yourself, you'll get burned out quick. But if you can work harder on yourself than you do your job to stay sharp. Now, I'm married, got 4 girls. And so I've got plenty going on. My wife works, I work, my girls are in sports. So how do you stay sharp? Well, I got a 30-minute commute to and from work. I get up like Coach Werner, I read in the morning. I always want to get up and get my mind right before I get to the office. But then on the way in, that's a great time to have some kind of audio book or a podcast of somebody else of what they're doing. I love to listen to John Maxwell on leadership, so I'm always trying to learn more about leadership and how to motivate and stay fired up and sharp myself. Because if I'm not fired up and sharp, how can I give something I don't have? And so that's a big part of in your career is make sure you're working harder on yourself than you do your job.
That's true. That's true. That one on vacation's big. We don't take vacations. So I want you guys to think about this and somebody respond. Give one example of a difficult instance with a sport head coach and how you handled it. Okay.
When I first started at Wake Forest, I had been a student at Wake Forest since 1993. I was assigned a team, and the coach had been there for about 25 years. So we all know how strength and conditioning has changed in the last 25 years. She had her ideas on how to train athletes and how her programming should go, and she knew what our philosophy was down in the weight room, where we were power clean, Olympic lifts, bench press, and she thought her women's golf team didn't need to do that. And she came down with a list of things that she felt that was necessary for her athletes to do. I think along the same lines as the sport coaches, we always try to get our athletes to buy in. But most importantly, if we can get that coach's support, that transfers down to the culture of the athlete. And so during our discussion, we exchanged ideas. I told her what I had planned, and it's not putting 400 pounds on a 120-pound women's golfer. It's doing a kettlebell squat, or like we talked about before, mastering bodyweight movements or something like that. Just getting the sport coaches to buy in, I think, has been a difficult process for all young coaches first starting out. And I think that was probably the most difficult thing that I've experienced when I first started at Wake.
Anybody else? Anybody else got any?
When I first started coaching at Colorado, we had one of the women's teams, and the head coach didn't want her athletes training in the weight room. And I'll never forget, my boss, Doc Crease, made me get up every morning at 5:30 and go be around that team while she put them through whatever she was going to do. I didn't do any of the workouts. I was there to cheer the girls on, encourage, and all that. The coach wouldn't even speak to me. After 6 weeks, she saw that the girls were buying in to me as a person, and I was building trust with them. She walked up to me one day after 6 weeks. She said, "Next week you got them. I want to see what you can do with them." And so there's going to be coaches you're going to come up against that don't agree with your philosophy. That's okay. It's not about your philosophy. It's not about your sets and reps. That is important. That makes a difference. But it's about the kids, and sometimes we can lose that. And I learned a lesson that year that if you will just serve and be there and have an impact on those kids, the coach will buy into you because the kids will first. Once the kids see, the coach see the kids have bought into you, the rest of it will be easy. It'll make a big difference.
Kind of on that same thread, I just want to see your hands go up. If you think, in this, you might look at it as a difficult situation with a head coach. You might find it something you enjoy doing. I don't know. Do you think as strength and conditioning coaches, we should punish athletes for things that go wrong with their head coach or with their academic advisor or with not going to class? Raise your hand if you think we should punish athletes for doing these things. Good. Because I can tell you, being in it for 25 years, I've had to do that. I've had head coaches. I've had, team rule violations, and you take care of it.
Now ask them how many have to do it.
Yeah, how many of you have to do it? Yeah, that's the difference. What's the difference in punishment and a reminder? And I'm going to tell you, in this day and age, you better use those words. Don't use the word punishment. To be careful how you speak. The difference in punishment and a reminder is that you've got to have that documented. To say, here's our team philosophy, here's our team rules. We don't punish athletes. We give them opportunities to catch up if they're behind in a certain area. And if you can't get up and go to class, then the head basketball coach is going to ask you to do this. I personally don't do those things unless they happen in the weight room or in strength and conditioning related activities. If they're late, I'll take care of them being late. I'll help them out, help remind them to be on time. But I'm not going to punish them. So that's an interesting response to the second question there. So, kind of on the same thread, give us an instance of a difficult situation and how you took care of it with a student athlete. We all have those. We have those kids that, they're Jekyll and Hyde. One day they're great, the next day they're giving you an attitude or giving you a problem or showing up late or, how have you guys handled it? What are some things you might have done that could help some people?
I can go ahead and start on this one. This will be my 26th year starting when the season rolls around, and it's kind of gone a full gamut for me. We started back in the day. If somebody was late, they missed this or missed that. It was always running this, running that, and when some current events came out, I called our administration and asked what was our policy on handling these things, and they said, we really don't have a policy, but we have a philosophy, and our philosophy is to not use exercise as punishment. And so the way we do it now is, and the way I've tried to do it is, if we're starting at 6 a.m. and one guy's late, that's fine. We're going to start the next workout. From now on, we're starting at 5:45. Somebody else misses, that's fine. From now on, we're at 5:30. And we can back it all the way up till we're going at 4 o'clock in the morning if we have to. And that's one way that I've tried to keep program-wide. And, because that if one guy's late, it affects the whole team. And now you're starting to have some peer pressure. And so, that's, I don't know if you would call that punishment or not, but. That's how I do it.
Anyone else?
Kind of to go back to what Greg was talking about, dealing with difficult athletes. And, you know, we get in this business because somebody's touched us, a coach has helped us along the way, whether it was through strength coach, through strength and conditioning or other avenues, and we want to give back. So kind of athlete I had, you know, I deal with men's golf, which they do a great job, but you have some kids who have never been in a weight room. It is a place they haven't touched. They've swung a golf club since they're 11 years old, but they've never been in a weight room, and they have all kind of issues. So I think the biggest thing we do as a coach is building that relationship, whether it's with your athletes, whether it's with your sport coach, getting them to trust. And you got to be able to give and take a little bit, kind of back to what Mark was, you know, talking about. 11 years ago when I started this business, I had what I wanted to do, and I was kind of offended if somebody wanted to do something else, or our coach wanted to bring something to the table. But I think you got to leave your egos at the door. You know, you got to make sure you're working with that athlete or working with that coach, and let them know you're rowing the boat together. You're all in this together. You're trying to get to the same point. And so kind of don't let it be if, hey, I want to try this. A coach says that, don't take it as that, hey, that's a stab on me. No, let's see how we can use that to get where we want to be. So just building that trust with the athlete, I think, gets you, you know. Right now I have a golfer who's been there 3 years, and his first year, I mean, he'd rather, if I told him, you know, I mean, I'd kick you square in the area, or you can lift weights. He'd rather get kicked and get out of there. But now he's kind of bought into it. He's doing it, and he sees some improvement from it. So it's just building that relationship with the athlete.
Good. Anybody else? Yep.
I think one thing that would help is if any of you guys out there married have children, it's like if you got kids, I got 4 girls at home, me and my wife. If you got to have discipline in the home if you want your kids to not be out of control and buck wild, right? I don't want my kids swinging from the rafters. So if you've ever seen parents, they know maybe one parent's a little more strict, the other one's a little more loose. Well, if the kid wants what they want, they go to the parents a little more loose to get their way, right? So kids are the same way in college. So what I'm saying is the biggest thing to do before you do any kind of disciplinary reminder in the weight room, make sure you're on the same page with the head coach on the expectations of how he or she wants that team run, and make sure the kids know that. Then you can enforce those rules and measures. And every punishment should always fit the crime. You should never, as a coach, it should be immediate, it should be swift, but it should always fit the crime of whatever they've done. And, you know, especially your freshmen, I mean, I just believe you got to be tough on them, but you got to get to know those kids first. Because I always like to say, rules without relationship equals rebellion. If you're not getting to know your kids, then how can you drop the hammer on them? You've got to get to know them. But the key's going to be you being on the same page with the expectations of that head coach and how they want that whole thing run. So that will help.
I think along the same lines as Donnie said about getting the coaches to buy in, how many coaches out there are required to be at their team's practices? Some, for the most part. Now, do those sport coaches run their practice the same way you would run your weight room? Like Donnie said, raising children, you teach them something at home, but then they get out in public and they're taught a different way. It's the same, similar to what we teach in the weight room. If I'm teaching discipline in the weight room and then I go to a practice and it's a little lackadaisical, they're getting a little bit rowdy, they're running around, like Coach Werner said, Jekyll and Hyde. How do you instill that in the weight room? And I think that, again, like Coach Bass was talking about, is instilling that culture and getting the trust from the head coach and getting that coach to buy in. I've got coaches who are all for me kicking guys out of the weight room, running them extra, getting them up at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing fun runs and stuff like that. But then maybe practice is a little bit more lackadaisical and doesn't go along with that same culture. So it makes you out to look like the bad guy. How many coaches who've instilled the punishment runs, how many of those were ordered by your sport coach? Same type of thing. What we're talking about is where does the liability lie in that? And because your head coach asks you to do it, why does that make you out to be the bad guy whether it was something outside of the sport, something they were doing in class, missed practice, whatnot, not necessarily missing a lift or not giving their 100% in the lift. How do you instill that, and how do you get the head coach to buy in and promote that same type of culture at the practice?
That's good. So I think a lot of these things come down to having a policy and having a written policy for those, and having it, like I think Dave and Donnie mentioned, having it in line with your head coach. Everything has to come under the head coach. And if the head coach, if your philosophy is to punish and the head coach is not, then you've got problems, okay? If the head coach is all about giving those reminders and holding people accountable, which he should be, she should be, then you've got a lot of ground to stand on. And that makes your job so much easier and so much more effective. If the athlete knows everybody's in line, everybody's reading off the same page, and everybody's, adhering to the same philosophy, then they know you don't have those problems generally. They know that they're going to be held to a different standard. Well, good. That's a good topic. How many of you, raise your hand if you, coming up in this profession, if you had a really good mentor? Good. Now raise your hand again if you are a good mentor. You're passing it on. You had a good mentor, and now you're becoming a mentor. You are a mentor to somebody. Okay, not as many hands. That goes back to the piece of coaching, and being a rewarding profession. We are there for the student athlete. Let me tell you secondarily, and you're a witness to it because all of you raised your hands. Being a mentor is that next greatest piece. Having an influence on student athletes, helping them improve their performance. The thing that will help you as you go through this profession is being a mentor and saying, now I want to pass it on. Now I want to, help others. So you guys give some examples of either you had a good mentor or some examples of how you can be a mentor. I know Donnie, I know you guys are all mentors to people. Tell us some examples of things you've done to maybe attract mentorees. What do you call them? Mentees? Yeah. And how you've helped them.
Well, I think being a young strength coach, I think it's important that if you're looking for a mentor, to develop the relationships, to get to know that person, what makes them tick. Look for a person that has a high quality of character, besides just being a good strength coach, who they are as a person. I think that's really important. I know as a young strength coach coming up, I was influenced by several strength coaches, Greg being one of them, Rachel down at Texas A&M, all had a positive influence on me. But I think it was just taking the time out to get to know them as people, and genuinely care, them genuinely caring about me and my development helped a lot.
Once upon a time, I was scared to death of Greg Werner. Didn't know where I stood. I did know I was really, really good at mopping his floors.
I painted his weight room once.
And Greg took the time one day to just sit down and talk shop with me for about 45 minutes. Hadn't said 2 words to me for about 18 months. And just him taking that time and again, just talking shop and just, one-on-one and knowing that he cared for that very short period of time, never forgot about that. So everybody in this room has the power to have a moment like that with a young up-and-comer that wants to be in this field. So, the takeaway from that is never underestimate how much power you have and how much influence you can have in just, a 45-minute conversation with a young coach. How are your floors looking, Coach? How are your floors looking?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Go ahead, Don.
Years ago, when I was at Colorado, like I said, as a young coach, fresh out of college football, I learned something. I took martial arts for about 5 years, and my martial art instructor was about 45 minutes to an hour from Boulder. And so I couldn't go see him a lot because it was so far away, and I worked a lot of hours, and by the time I would get off, the class would be over. The guy taught from his garage at home. But I'll never forget, I felt bad because I couldn't go up there to see him, and he was, looking back now, he was a very strong mentor in my life, and still is a voice today even. And I'll never forget I was about 24, 25 years old. He spoke to me one night. It was just me and him, and I said, I feel so bad I can't make it. He says, listen, I'm going to tell you something. He said, if you want to be good at martial arts, keep coming to class. I'll teach you the lessons and the techniques. He says, but if you want to be great, he said, you need to start teaching somebody else. And I'll never forget that. So what I started doing, I couldn't go to class, so I started just teaching some of the athletes and students on campus in Boulder. And I noticed every time I'd go back, I was passing the students that were in my class at the time. And so I take that and challenge you in coaching. If you want to coach, read books, study videos, that'd be good. But if you want to be a great coach, start mentoring just one person. Just take one person and start teaching them. And here's what my instructor told me. I said, I can't teach somebody something karate. I think I was like a orange or purple belt. He goes, you just need to know a little bit more than them. And when he said that, it clicked with me. And that made me a much better martial artist. And as a coach today, what makes me a better coach is teaching the little bit I know to other young coaches up and coming how to get through this field. So I challenge you to start mentoring somebody this year if you haven't.
Hold on, I have something. The deal is everybody in this room is a mentor, whether you know it or not, because you're working with athletes every day, and they're looking at you to be a mentor, and you're guiding them, you're coaching them, you're carrying them on. You're a mentor whether you think it or not. So you probably need to start setting those expectations a little bit higher so that you know that people are watching every movement that you make. You are, whether you're saying anything or doing anything, you might be mentoring somebody right now in this room and you don't even know it. I had great mentors, Rachel Ellsworth, Terry Jones, and one of the other ways is communication. I can ask as many questions. I still contact them on a daily basis. Ray at one point told me to stop asking questions because I was asking too many at one time. So make sure you ask those questions of the people around you, but also of your athletes. What do they need? That's going to help you be a better mentor. It's going to be completely different from 10 years ago when I first started to now what the athletes need. It's a totally different atmosphere. So making sure that you are asking your athletes, communicating with them, as well as your other coaches and your mentors.
Yeah, and one thing I've learned about mentorship is it's okay to watch whoever you're mentoring fail at something, just to screw something up. You know, I think a lot of times we try to put them on the people we mentor on a very narrow course. And I think it's okay to let them, if you know they're going to screw something up, just go ahead and let them do it sometimes. Sometimes it's the best way for them to learn something. I learned that through doing that on my own. So I think sometimes we're a little too narrow with people that we mentor, and it's good to let them go a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's a mistake. Some of us assume that if we're going to be a mentor, we've got to be perfect. You know, we've got to write a book, you know. It's not that way. I've had great mentors in kind of a reverse mentor position. People that I've hired to be assistants of mine who became mentors of mine because they were at a certain place where they learned from a certain mentor that I would have never known about had I not listened to somebody that was technically in a position below me. But, you know, that's how you learn. And they become mentors, you know. I learned about Coach Stuckey from Noel Durfee, you know, about Coach Stiggins from Noel Durfee. And he was a mentor of mine. And that's how it works. So don't think you have to be perfect to be a mentor. And start right away, helping others. The question was, and Dr. Hayline kind of alluded to it, that we're seeing athletes now that have specialized at such an early age, specializing before puberty. Their parents are, you know, pushing them into specialization at such an early age, and now we're getting those athletes. You know, we're getting athletes that haven't had PE programs, that haven't had multiple sport experiences, that have been specialized and that come to us totally imbalanced and broken down in certain areas. You know, what are some experiences you guys have had dealing with that, and how have you addressed it?
Touch on that. Again, I deal with golf, and I deal with high-level golfers that have been golfing since they were super young age. So the approach I take, obviously, kind of to keep building the relationship with the coach. A couple years ago, I did the TPI certification, so I do the screens in that because it is golf-based to kind of look kind of what imbalances they do have, which relates to their swing. But I go back to a back-to-basics approach with some of these kids. It's not all of the kids I deal with. I have some that are multi-sport athletes, and they're great. You know, they come in, and they're more durable. But I have kids that's all they've done. It's golf. So I go back to basics. I keep it simple with them. I work on their imbalances by get them good at push-ups, get them good at pull-ups, get them at squats and different lunge patterns. But keep it basic. But you got to understand these kids are taking 200 swings a day. Some of them are high velocity, some of them are not. So I got to build it where they're going to hold up and be able to withstand that swing. But I don't try to overcomplicate it. Obviously, that you can go on YouTube, you can type in training and find anything out there that looks super specific to golf. But I'm trying to make them a better athlete, and that way the golf coach can take it and make them a better golfer. So I try to keep it basic and go that route.
Anything else? You see a lot of that? How many of you deal with basketball? How many of you hate the AAU system? I mean, the way these kids come in now have played their whole life, the tournament, game, and never practice, never train. You see that?
Yeah, we recruit a lot of high-end basketball players, and you know, they come in the program, and all they've done is play basketball basically year-round. We had a guy come in last year that literally, he probably played more basketball games in that year than a professional basketball team did. And so they're almost, we have to start at recovery. When they get to our program, I felt like a couple of the guys that we had to actually start with recovery. And so it's something that I think is not going to change. So we have to figure out a way to adapt to it, because there's just too much money involved with it at the AAU level. So I think one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to come to grips with the fact that it probably is not going to change, and we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it.
I work with Alabama softball, and over the years I've seen them coming in. They're getting better at softball, but the athletes they're not really athletes. Their strength isn't there, their power isn't there, but they know how to swing a bat and they know how to pitch a ball. But I don't really have a solution for it. My question is to you is, who else is seeing it? I would love to talk to anybody that's working with softball or baseball, and we can just sit there and talk about what can we do for our athletes to make them better. Coming in, what do we send to them when they get here or before they even get to your program so they know? I don't do any pre-testing because I never know what I'm going to get. I never know if they're going to be an athlete that can jump right in at the college level, or if I'm going to have an athlete that's never seen a weight room in her entire life. All she's done is thrown 200 pitches since she was 8 years old. She's so dominant on one side that I can't even attempt to put her, even really teach her how to do body weight exercises correctly because she's so imbalanced. But if anybody wants to talk, I'm here all week. Come talk to me. I'd love to have a discussion.
I asked one of our players the other day, did he ever play another sport? He said, yeah. He plays FIFA on Xbox. That's his other sport.
That goes on a lot. Well, before we wrap it up, is there anything in the audience? Anybody have any questions? There's a mic right there, and there's a mic right there. Is there anything you guys have any questions about? Okay, good. Last thing, I just challenge you to keep your act sharp. Stay sharp. Thank you very much.